Former President Obama is on book tour. He's making a lot of different claims about his legacy on Obamacare and so much more.
Indeed he is. D.C. Bureau Chief of the Intercept and our friend Ryan Grim is here to discuss Obama's take on how he got things done and why he failed to get other things done. Great to see you, Ryan.
Good to see you, too.
So we pulled down some specific quotes here, but first let me get your overall impression of the interviews that former President Obama has been giving and what has come out of his book so far and how it jives with your experience of that administration as a reporter who was covering it.
Well, so far, this is the book that I think everybody expected that he would write. In fact, I think, if you would have pressed people to guess whether he would do his memoir in 1 or 2 volumes, the smart money would have been on 2 volumes, and that's what he's done. The first one is nearly 800 pages, and it runs through the first 4 years of his presidency. And in his defense, the president of the United States is involved in absolutely everything in the world, and so over 8 years, packing that into a single volume is going to be difficult. But it's extra difficult for somebody like Obama because of the way he analyzes everything from every possible direction, dissecting from left, right, and center. And what you find is the same thing that you would find in his press conferences, is the same thing you're seeing in his interviews now. It's sort of a rationalization, for why more wasn't possible, and for why those who were pushing him to be more aggressive were actually wrong, which is happening at the same time as this weird kind of cognitive dissonance around the nature of the Republican Party. In 2010, right? Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, that's the part I was really interested in, which is that he presents himself as this figure almost consistently, as just faced against these innumerable odds. And he's like, because I'm the smartest person on earth, I analyzed everything and concluded that only what I did was the correct way in order to go about things. And I mean, it's just very, very dismissive and absolving, really, of himself of so many decisions that he made throughout his presidency. As far as I know, he hasn't ever said that he did anything wrong while in office.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The only things he would sort of acknowledge that he did wrong would be not doing the right thing sooner.
Yeah,
that he was eventually right, but he just was it was too generous to his opposition and allowed the situation to go on for too long before he acted. He might say that on criminal justice reform, for instance, but you're right. So Obama did have this belief in the power of his own personal story, which he has written twice before this memoir, but also in his ability to tell his story to people and to use the power of reason and argument and storytelling to bring people to his way of seeing things. And from John Boehner on, that was just a complete and total failure. Obama thought that he was, making progress with John Boehner, giving him the Merlot that he likes, and talking to him for hours and hours and hours. Boehner would come back to the Capitol and just make fun of Obama. They would leave him on sometimes when they were talking by phone. Boehner would put him on speakerphone and mute, and the staff would just kind of sit around and chuckle and smoke cigarettes and drink wine. So there was this huge disconnect between the power that Obama thought his words had and the power that they actually had with his opponents. And you can understand why he believed it. He gave a speech in 2004 and went from a guy who couldn't get onto the convention floor in 2000 to a top-tier presidential candidate. So he showed the power of words, but he also showed the limitation of the power of those words.
Mm-hmm. So I have an answer to the question of, did Obama admit to any mistakes? Because he got asked this in an NPR interview. Is there something you would have done differently? And he said, In my first couple of years in office, I think I had an unwarranted faith that if we did the right thing and implemented good policies, then people would know. And we didn't sell it hard enough. Now, part of it, I have to cut myself and my team a little bit of slack. We had so much stuff coming at us at one time, right? We had the worst financial crisis. We had the banks about to go under. We had the auto industry about to go under. We had 2 wars. We still had a very active al-Qaeda. And so, as we used to call it, we're drinking from a fire hose. And so we didn't have time to do a bunch of victory laps or carefully staged PR campaigns around what we did. So the problem in his conception here isn't any, lack of doing enough or any of the specific actions that they took. It was that they didn't sell those actions effectively enough.
Right. And, what he doesn't mention that, the decision to just let the foreclosure crisis, rip through America's middle class, might have backfired and might have caused political problems for them. And you can't sell the fact that you dealt with the foreclosure crisis if you didn't actually deal with the foreclosure crisis. But it also does show this naivete around how you can use policy politically. In the beginning of the administration, there were people who said, look, what you need to do is send everybody a check. You don't have to sign Barack Obama, but you could do that. But send everybody a stimulus check. George W. Bush did that, in 2001 or so, 2003 again. And everybody who got those checks still remembers that. That was actually an idea that he stole from Bernie Sanders at the time. It was an independent member of the House. And his economist said to him, no, there are papers that have been written by credible economists that you get a slightly higher level of growth if you just slip the money into people's paychecks by tweaking the withholding policies, because then they have more money in their accounts and they spend more money, and because they spend a little bit more money, the economy grows faster. Whereas if they get that check, if it's a $600 check, they might spend $500 of it and save $100 of it. And so Obama said, okay, that's all very logical. Let's just slip the money into people's paychecks so that they spend it and they grow the economy more. Yet at the same time, they had crippled their own stimulus by making sure it stayed under this arbitrary figure that the Rahm Emanuels and the Larry Summerses of his administration had come up with. You can't spend more than $1 trillion, or you can't spend more than $800 billion, or else it's going to give people sticker shock. And that is what actually hampered the economy. So, so that they would fight for these little tiny inches of growth while giving away the entire game on the big kahuna.
Yeah, I mean, we have a quote on Lyndon Johnson that we have to read to you, Ryan, which is just, it really is it's just such an indictment here. Let's put this up there. Yes, whatever. He's like, not publicly. Privately, I would remind people that Lyndon Johnson got stuff done because he had the votes. Simple. FDR got stuff done when he had the votes, and the truth of the matter is that most of the time what we think of as arm twisting and browbeating, what it really comes down to most of the time is, do you have the votes? And he analogizes that to the Affordable Care Act. I mean, Ryan, you covered this at the time, and as I would remind, and I did on the show yesterday, is that actually Johnson had the same amount of votes as Kennedy, and somehow Kennedy got nothing done and Johnson did, so clearly something happened. I mean, it just seems to me, once again, that he refuses to have any scenario in his head where he could have played things differently in order to get a different outcome.
Right. That's exactly right. And Johnson, in order to get things done, would attack the Republican Party and say, this is the party of Lincoln. How is it that the party of Lincoln is against this civil rights bill? And he got what's called he moved what's called a discharge petition in the House of Representatives. And he did that secretly behind the scenes. That people didn't know that he was the one orchestrating it, but he had allies over there showing that, look, there are a majority of votes. You sign up 218 plus members of the House in this discharge petition, and it forces the hand. These are tools that are available to a president, and if they want to use that, whereas Obama didn't actually, interestingly, really want to attack Republicans for a very long time. He just attacked Washington.
Yeah.
So voters would say, okay, you're right, Washington does stink, and so so throughout the party that was in power. But you're right, you don't wake up with the votes. You have to go out and get the votes.
Yeah. And Ryan, why is this all important? Because I think in part a failure to reckon with the Obama era continues to hamstring not just the Democratic Party, but the country in general. I also think it's important to understand what happened, what actually unfolded in these presidencies, to understand the moment we're living in now and what is actually possible in terms of governance. But there's also a very specific reason that you mentioned just a minute ago, which is that a lot of these people who were hanging around the Obama administration and setting the course, and frankly hanging around the Clinton administrations too, are likely to be back in charge here in Washington now. One of them in particular that I'm curious what you know about his potential influence on a Biden administration is Rahm Emanuel, who was one of the worst actors in the Obama administration, has continued to be a bad actor post-Obama administration. How much influence does he have in Biden world?
Well, so what I don't think he has as much as he suggests that he does. Whenever you look at the articles that are talking about the influence that Emanuel has, it's very clear that the source for those is Emanuel and people around him. It's in his interest to make it appear that he is an influential player there. Obviously, he knows all of these people. What I've been told is that he is pushing quite hard to be transportation secretary, which is a cabinet position, but it's kind of a junior cabinet position, and it's in a way a recognition of his political toxicity. That's such an apolitical cabinet position that Obama gave it to a Republican, Ray LaHood, who actually Emanuel recruited to that position. And Emanuel has been a champion of the kinds of transportation policies that Democrats like. Bike lanes, high-speed rail, public transportation, that sort of thing. And so transportation is not really an issue where the kind of center and progressive fight kind of plays out. So in going for that position rather than something closer to the center of power is something of a recognition that there are some limits to what he can accomplish given how many enemies he's created within the party.
Interesting. Really I would be very wary of opening the door even a crack to Rahm Emanuel, though. Ryan, so great
Thanks,
to see
Ryan.
you. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Coming up, Kyle Kulinski with his predictions for the coming Biden administration. That's next.